The wine glass caught the restaurant's amber lighting as Kiera raised it high, her Harvard MBA ring glinting like a warning signal I should have heeded years ago. The entire table of her colleagues leaned forward, anticipating another one of her legendary toasts that always seemed to put someone in their place. "To my husband Rowan," she began, her voice carrying that particular tone she reserved for public humiliation, disguised as affection. "Without my degree, you'd be nobody." The laughter erupted around the table like a pack of hyenas discovering fresh prey. Jennifer from accounting nearly choked on her salmon. Mike from marketing slapped the table so hard his water glass jumped. Even the waiter paused his service to smirk at the poor schmuck married to the brilliant executive. I sat there, fork halfway to my mouth, watching my wife of 3 years deliver what felt like a verbal execution with surgical precision. The worst part wasn't the words themselves. I'd heard variations of this speech before. The worst part was how everyone nodded along, agreeing that yes, the blue-collar IT contractor had certainly married up, and wasn't he lucky to have such an accomplished woman willing to settle for him. "Come on, Rowan, say something," urged Derek Vaughn, Kiera's business partner who'd flown in from Chicago for this quarterly dinner. His $1,000 suit and practiced smile made him look like every other corporate climber I'd met through Kiera's work. Don't let her get away with that. But I didn't defend myself. I didn't launch into a speech about how I'd built my own consulting business from nothing, or how I'd put myself through technical college while working nights at a warehouse, or how my little IT contracts had helped pay for this very dinner. Instead, I did something that surprised everyone, including myself. I stood up. The conversation died as I reached into my wallet and placed 3 20s on the table, enough to cover my meal and tip. The silence stretched uncomfortable and long, broken only by the soft jazz playing overhead and the distant clatter of dishes from the kitchen. "Rowan?" Kiera's voice carried a note of uncertainty I rarely heard. "What are you doing?" I looked down at her, this woman I'd loved enough to marry, who apparently viewed me as some kind of charity case she'd graciously rescued from obscurity. Her perfectly styled blonde hair, her designer dress that cost more than most people's rent, her expression of confusion mixed with growing embarrassment as she realized the entire table was watching our little drama unfold. "Enjoying the education," I said quietly, and walked out. The cool October air hit my face as I stepped onto the sidewalk, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe properly. Behind me, I could hear the muffled sounds of conversation resuming, probably Kiera explaining away my behavior with some excuse about work stress or masculine pride. My phone buzzed twice during the walk to my truck. I didn't check it. The drive home took 20 minutes through the winding roads of our suburban neighborhood, past houses that looked like they'd been designed by the same architect who'd forgotten that people actually lived in them. Our place sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, a modest 2-story that Kiera constantly complained was beneath her standards, but tolerated because the location was acceptable for entertaining her work friends. I parked in the garage and sat in the darkness for a long moment, listening to the engine tick as it cooled. Through the thin wall, I could hear our neighbor's television playing some late-night talk show. Normal people living normal lives, probably not dealing with spouses who treated them like accessories to be shown off or hidden depending on the social situation. My phone buzzed again. Then again. I pulled it out and saw 3 messages from Kiera, each one more urgent than the last. The first was a simple, "Where did you go?" The second, "Everyone's asking about you." The third, "This is embarrassing. Come back." I turned the phone off and went inside. The house felt different somehow, like I was seeing it through new eyes. Everything was arranged according to Kiera's preferences. The furniture, the art, even the books on the shelves were chosen more for how they looked than whether anyone actually read them. I'd gone along with it all, telling myself that compromise was part of marriage, that her aesthetic sense was better than mine anyway. But tonight, it felt like living in a museum dedicated to someone else's life. I walked to my home office, a converted spare bedroom that Kiera tolerated as long as I kept the door closed when company came over. She said the computer equipment and cables made the place look unprofessional. What she didn't understand was that this room, with its multiple monitors and server rack and the faint hum of cooling fans, represented something she'd never had to build for herself: independence. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. The screen illuminated rows of folders and applications that most people never thought about, but that quietly ran their daily lives. Phone plans, insurance policies, subscription services, cloud storage, streaming accounts, the digital infrastructure that made modern life possible. Kiera had never bothered to learn about any of it. Why would she? She had a degree from Harvard, after all. Technical details were beneath someone of her education level. She had people for that sort of thing. She had me. I opened a spreadsheet I'd created years ago when we first moved in together, back when combining our lives seemed romantic instead of strategic. It listed every account, every service, every monthly payment that kept our household running. What I saw there made me smile for the first time all evening. 90% of everything was in my name. The phone plan was the first to go. 3 clicks, and Kiera's number was removed from my family account. I downloaded the confirmation email and saved it to a folder I created called Independence Day. Next came the car insurance. Kiera drove a leased BMW that she'd insisted was necessary for her professional image. The insurance was under my name because my driving record was cleaner. Another few clicks, another confirmation email. Her coverage would end at midnight. The gym membership took 30 seconds. The premium grocery delivery service that brought organic everything to our doorstep twice a week. Gone. The cloud storage account where she kept all her work presentations and personal photos. Terminated. The streaming services she used for her weekend Netflix binges. Canceled. Each confirmation email felt like removing a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. But I was just getting started. I opened our shared Google Drive, a digital space we'd created to store important documents and photos from our life together. Kiera used it primarily for work overflow, storing client presentations and project files that were too large for her company's server. She'd never bothered to set up her own professional storage. Why pay for something when your husband already had a premium account? I methodically downloaded every document that belonged to me: tax records with my information, photos from before we met, files related to my business. Then I removed my access from every folder she'd created and changed the sharing permissions. Her work files were still there, but they'd become inaccessible the moment my account was terminated. The email to her employer was harder to write, but necessary. I'd done consulting work for Kiera's company on several occasions, helping them upgrade their network security and troubleshoot server issues. I'd always been careful to maintain professional boundaries, but my connection to Kiera had made me their go-to contractor for technical problems. "Dear Mr. Patterson," I typed, "effective immediately, I will no longer be available for consulting services or as a professional reference. Please update your vendor records accordingly. Thank you for your understanding. Rowan Kerrick." I sent it before I could second-guess myself. My phone, still turned off, sat silent on the desk. I could imagine it filling up with increasingly frantic messages as Kiera realized something was wrong, but that would have to wait until morning. Tonight was about preparation. I spent the next hour documenting everything I'd done, creating a timeline with screenshots and confirmation numbers. Not because I expected legal trouble, everything I'd canceled was legitimately mine, but because I wanted a record of this moment. The moment I stopped being a supporting character in someone else's story. Around midnight, I heard a car door slam in the driveway. Kiera was home. I listened to her heels click across the hardwood floor, heard her call my name once, then twice. The sound of her footsteps on the stairs, the bedroom door closing with more force than necessary. I stayed in my office, working on client projects until nearly 3 a.m. When I finally went to bed, Kiera was asleep, or pretending to be. In the darkness, I could hear her breathing, steady, and controlled. Even unconscious, she maintained perfect composure. I set my alarm for 6 and fell asleep with a sense of anticipation I hadn't felt in years. The alarm came too soon, but I was already awake, staring at the ceiling and listening to the sounds of our neighborhood coming to life. Garbage trucks rumbling down the street, dogs barking, the distant hum of morning traffic. Kiera's side of the bed was empty. I could hear the shower running in the master bathroom, along with her voice as she talked on the phone, probably calling someone about last night, spinning the story to make my departure seem like a minor embarrassment, rather than the earthquake it had felt like to me. I got dressed and went downstairs to make coffee. Through the kitchen window, I could see our neighbor Mrs. Chen tending to her garden, probably wondering why the BMW was parked at an odd angle in our driveway. Kiera wasn't the best parker under normal circumstances, and last night probably hadn't qualified as normal. 20 minutes later, Kiera appeared in the kitchen, dressed for another day of corporate conquest. Her makeup was flawless, her hair perfectly styled, her expression carefully neutral. She poured herself coffee and checked her phone, frowning slightly at whatever she saw on the screen. "We need to talk about last night," she said without looking up. "Do we?" "You embarrassed me in front of my colleagues. Derek is flying back to Chicago this morning, and the last impression he has of you is walking out of dinner like a child having a tantrum." I sipped my coffee and watched her scroll through her messages. Any second now, she'd try to make a call and discover that her phone had no service. The anticipation was almost pleasant. "I'm serious, Rowan. I work with these people every day. When you act out like that, it reflects on me." "Act out," I repeated. Interesting choice of words. She finally looked up from her phone, and I saw the first crack in her composure. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. You're right. You're always right. That's what your degree is for, isn't it?" Kiera's eyes narrowed, but before she could respond, she noticed something on her phone screen. She tapped it once, then again, harder. "That's weird. I'm not getting any signal." "Huh. Technology, right? So unreliable." She walked to the window, holding her phone up like she was trying to catch a better signal. "This is ridiculous. I have important calls to make this morning." "Maybe try the landline." "We don't have a landline, Rowan. Nobody has landlines anymore." She was getting frustrated now, the perfect composure starting to slip. "I need to call the phone company." "Good luck with that." Something in my tone made her stop and really look at me for the first time since she'd come downstairs. I was sitting calmly at our kitchen table, drinking coffee and watching her growing panic with what probably looked like mild interest. "What did you do?" "Me? Nothing. I'm just a nobody without a degree, remember? What could I possibly do?" The realization hit her like a physical blow. I could see it in her face the moment she understood that her phone problems weren't a technical glitch or a billing error. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed again. "You didn't." "Didn't what?" "Rowan, this isn't funny. I have a presentation this morning. I need my phone." I finished my coffee and stood up, rinsing the mug in the sink with deliberate care. "You're a Harvard MBA, Kiera. I'm sure you'll figure something out." I left her standing in the kitchen and went to my office to start the workday. Through the thin wall, I could hear her moving around frantically, probably looking for her laptop charger or trying to connect to the internet. It was going to be an interesting morning. The first real scream came at 7:30. I was on a conference call with a client in Denver, troubleshooting their email server, when Kiera's voice cut through the house like a fire alarm. Through my office door, I could hear her having what sounded like a very one-sided conversation with someone who clearly wasn't being helpful. "What do you mean my account is suspended? I've been with this company for 5 years. Check again." A pause. Then, "I don't care what your system shows. This is obviously a mistake." Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, Her voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper that I recognized as her trying not to lose it completely tone. "Transfer me to your supervisor. Now." I muted my microphone and listened as she spent the next 15 minutes being transferred from department to department, each conversation ending with increasing frustration. The beautiful thing about customer service, I reflected, was that it operated according to strict protocols. Without proper account verification, without being the named account holder, she was just another angry caller who couldn't prove she belonged on the account. My client in Denver was explaining their backup procedures when I heard Kiera's heels clicking rapidly down the hallway toward my office. She didn't knock. "I need to talk to you, now." I held up one finger and continued my conversation. "Right. So the issue is with your Exchange server configuration. Let me remote in and take a look." "Rowan." Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "I'm working, Kiera. Some of us have jobs that don't involve making toasts at expensive restaurants." She stood in my doorway for 30 seconds, probably calculating whether causing a scene would help or hurt her position. Finally, she turned and left, but I could hear her pacing in the living room like a caged animal. The call with Denver took another 20 minutes. By the time I hung up, the house had gone suspiciously quiet. I found Kiera sitting at our kitchen table with her laptop open, surrounded by papers, and wearing the expression of someone who'd just discovered that the ground beneath her feet was actually quicksand. "The car won't start," she said without looking up. "That's unfortunate. The insurance company says my coverage was canceled. The bank says 3 different automatic payments bounced this morning. My gym membership is suspended." She finally raised her eyes to meet mine. "And somehow, all of my work files have vanished from the cloud." I poured myself another cup of coffee. "Sounds like you're having a rough morning." "Cut the act, Rowan. We both know what's happening here." "Do we? Enlighten me." Kiera closed her laptop with deliberate precision. "You're having some kind of breakdown because of what I said last night. Fine, I get it. Your feelings were hurt. But this is childish, and it's affecting my ability to do my job." "Your job?" I sat down across from her. "The one that requires the degree I apparently don't have." "Don't be ridiculous." "I'm not being anything. I'm just trying to understand how someone with a Harvard MBA ends up unable to manage her own phone plan or car insurance. I mean, they must have covered basic life skills in business school, right?" Her face flushed red. "You know exactly why those accounts are in your name. When we moved in together, it was more convenient to let the nobody handle the technical stuff while you focused on more important things." "That's not what I said." "Isn't it?" I leaned back in my chair. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like someone with a very expensive education has spent the last 3 years letting someone without a degree manage every aspect of her daily life. Kind of ironic, don't you think?" Kiera was quiet for a long moment, and I could practically see her calculating her next move. She'd always been strategic, even in personal conversations. It was one of the things I'd initially found attractive about her, the way she could analyze a situation and find the most effective approach. Now it just felt manipulative. "Okay," she said finally. "You've made your point. I shouldn't have said what I said last night. It was thoughtless, and I'm sorry." "Are you?" "Yes, I am. Now can we please fix this? I have a client meeting at 10, and I need access to my files." I checked my watch. It was already 8:45. "That's cutting it pretty close." "Rowan, I'm serious. This could affect my job." "Your job that makes you somebody?" She slammed her hand on the table hard enough to make her laptop jump. "Enough! This is ridiculous. You're acting like a spoiled child who didn't get his way." "Am I? Or am I acting like someone who just realized he's been subsidizing the lifestyle of someone who thinks he's worthless?" "I don't think you're worthless." "No? Then what am I, Kiera? In your own words, what am I without your degree?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. We both knew she couldn't answer that question without proving my point. My phone rang. My actual phone, the one with service. The caller ID showed a number I recognized as one of Kiera's colleagues. "Looks like someone's trying to reach you," I said, showing her the screen. "Answer it." "It's not my call. Rowan, please, just this once." I let it go to voicemail. A few seconds later, my phone chimed with a message notification. I played it on speaker. "Hi, this is Jennifer from Kiera's office. Kiera, I've been trying to reach you all morning. Derek is asking about the Morrison presentation files, and your email keeps bouncing back. Can you call me as soon as you get this? The client meeting is in an hour." The message ended, leaving us sitting in silence. Kiera's face had gone pale. "The Morrison presentation," she whispered. "Important? It's a $12 million contract. 6 months of work." "Wow. That does sound important. Good thing you have that degree to help you figure it out." She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "You're enjoying this?" "I'm learning from it. There's a difference." "Learning what?" I stood up and rinsed my coffee mug again, taking my time. "That without your degree, I might be nobody. But without me, you're nothing." The silence that followed was broken by another call to my phone. This time, it was Derek himself. I looked at Kiera, who was watching my phone like it might explode. "Want me to answer this one?" She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. I declined the call and turned my phone to silent. "I need to get to work," she said finally. "How? Your car won't start, remember?" "I'll call a rideshare." "Good thinking. Very independent of you." She gathered her papers and laptop with shaking hands. At the kitchen doorway, she turned back to me. "How long is this going to go on?" "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do. How long until you turn everything back on?" I pretended to think about it. "Well, that depends. How long did it take you to get your degree?" 4 years. "Huh. That's interesting. I wonder how long it takes to become nobody." She left without another word. I heard the front door slam, followed by the sound of her heels clicking down our front walkway. I went to the window and watched her standing on the sidewalk, holding her phone up again like she was trying to summon a signal through pure force of will. After a few minutes, she started walking toward the main road, probably hoping to catch a taxi or find someone willing to give her a ride. It was a beautiful morning. Clear skies, comfortable temperature, perfect for a walk. Too bad she was wearing heels. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Kiera. We need to talk when I get home tonight." I deleted the message without responding. By noon, I'd received 7 calls to my phone from various numbers, all looking for Kiera. Her office, her gym, someone from what sounded like a spa appointment she'd forgotten to cancel. Each time, I let it go to voicemail and saved the messages in a folder I labeled Educational Materials. I was debugging a network configuration for a client in Phoenix when my doorbell rang. Through the security camera app on my phone, I could see a woman in the expensive-looking suit standing on my porch, checking her watch repeatedly. I didn't recognize her, but something about her posture screamed, "Corporate emergency." I saved my work and went to answer the door. "Mr. Kerrick? My name is Jennifer Walsh. I work with your wife at Patterson & Associates." Jennifer from the phone messages. She was younger than I'd expected, probably in her late 20s, with the kind of aggressive professionalism that suggested she was climbing the corporate ladder as fast as her designer heels could carry her. "Kiera's not here," I said. "Actually, I was hoping to speak with you. May I come in?" I stepped aside and let her into our living room. She glanced around, taking in the furniture and decor with the practiced eye of someone who'd learned to assess people by their possessions. "This is about the Morrison presentation," she said without preamble. I figured. "Kiera mentioned that you handle the technical aspects of her file management. We're hoping you might be able to help us recover some documents that seem to have been corrupted." Corrupted. That was one way to put it. "What kind of documents?" "Client presentations, financial projections, 6 months of research, everything related to our biggest contract this year." She sat down on our couch without being invited. The client meeting has been postponed, but we need those files by tomorrow morning at the latest. And Kiera can't access them herself? Jennifer's professional smile flickered slightly. She's having some technical difficulties, phone issues, computer problems. She thought you might be able to help. Did she? Mr. Kerrick, I'm going to be direct with you. This contract is worth $12 million to our firm. If we can't deliver the presentation tomorrow, we lose the client. That affects everyone's job, including your wife's. I sat down in the chair across from her. That does sound serious. It is. So can you help us? I'm sure I could, if I wanted to. The smile disappeared entirely. If you wanted to? Well, here's the thing, Jennifer. I'm just a guy without a college degree. Yesterday, in front of a room full of people, your colleague, my wife, made it very clear that without her education, I'd be nobody. So I'm trying to understand why someone with a Harvard MBA needs help from a nobody to do her job. Jennifer's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, understanding, and finally something that looked like panic. Mr. Kerrick, whatever personal issues you and Kiera are having— Personal issues? No, this is educational. See, I'm learning about the value of higher education. Apparently, it's worth enough that someone would spend 4 years and probably $200,000 to get one, but somehow it's not worth enough to teach basic life skills like managing a phone plan or backing up computer files. Sir, I don't think you understand the situation. Oh, I understand perfectly. You have a crisis, and you need the nobody to fix it for you. The question is, what's it worth to you? Jennifer leaned forward. What do you mean? I mean, I'm a consultant. I solve technical problems for a living. This sounds like a technical problem. So what's the consulting fee for recovering $12 million worth of files? I don't have authority to negotiate consulting fees. Then maybe you should call someone who does. She pulled out her phone, realized she couldn't make the call in front of me, and excused herself to step outside. Through the window, I watched her pace back and forth on my front lawn, gesticulating wildly at whoever was on the other end of the line. The conversation lasted 10 minutes. When she came back inside, she looked like someone who'd just been given very specific instructions she didn't like. My supervisor would like to speak with you, she said. I'm listening. He's authorized to offer you $5,000 for immediate file recovery. I pretended to consider it. That's generous, but I'm afraid there's a problem. What problem? I don't have access to the files anymore. Jennifer's face went white. What do you mean you don't have access? I mean, I canceled my cloud storage account this morning. All the shared folders were deleted when the account closed. But those were Kiera's work files? Her voice wavered as she said it, like she was hoping I'd laugh and tell her it was all a misunderstanding. Jennifer stood frozen in the middle of my living room, clutching her phone with both hands, eyes wide behind her glasses. The implication of what she was realizing hadn't fully settled yet, but it was getting there fast. Stored on my personal account, using my credit card, managed by my login credentials. Technically, they were my files. I just let her use them. I kept my tone calm, almost instructional. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger had already done its job and moved on. What remained was clarity. You deleted 6 months of work? Her voice jumped an octave. She looked genuinely horrified now, as if the floor might give out beneath her at any second. I canceled a service I was paying for. The fact that someone else was storing important business documents on my personal account without backing them up elsewhere seems like a planning problem, not a technical problem. Jennifer stared at me like I'd just told her I'd burned down the office building. Her mouth opened, then closed again, searching for a response that didn't come. I could almost hear the corporate risk management alarms going off in her head. This is sabotage. She finally landed on the word, as if naming it might give her some control over the situation. This is education. Your colleague wanted to teach me about the value of her degree. I'm teaching her about the value of mine. The silence that followed was thick and uncomfortable. Jennifer shifted her weight from one foot to the other, clearly unsure whether she was supposed to argue, apologize, or call a lawyer. Mr. Kerrick, you don't understand. If we lose this contract, people will lose their jobs. Her voice softened, switching tactics. This wasn't about blame anymore. It was about consequences. People with degrees? The question slipped out before I could stop it, sharp but honest. Yes, but then I'm sure they'll figure something out. After all, they're educated. Jennifer stood up abruptly, the chair legs scraping loudly against the floor. Her face had gone pale, and she avoided looking directly at me now. I need to make another phone call. You do that. I'll be here, being nobody. She didn't respond. She grabbed her bag, moved quickly toward the door, and left without saying goodbye. I walked over to the window and watched as she sat in her car for 20 minutes, phone pressed to her ear, gesturing wildly with her free hand. Even from a distance, I could tell the calls weren't going well. Her shoulders sagged a little more with each one. Finally, she started the engine and drove away, probably heading back to the office to deliver the bad news. I felt a little sorry for her. She seemed like a decent person who'd gotten caught in the middle of someone else's marriage, someone who'd believed professionalism could insulate her from personal fallout, but not sorry enough to fix the problem. Some lessons only stick when they're expensive. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize, but when I answered, the voice was familiar. Rowan, this is Tom Patterson, Kiera's boss. Hello, Mr. Patterson. There was a brief pause on the line, the sound of someone choosing their words carefully. I think we need to have a conversation. Can you come to my office this afternoon? I glanced at my calendar, at the neatly stacked blocks of time that suddenly felt very valuable. I'm pretty busy today. Client calls, you know how it is. Rowan, I'm going to be direct with you. We have a situation here that could cost my firm a very important client. Jennifer tells me you might be able to help us resolve it. Jennifer told you correctly. I might be able to help, but I'm not sure I want to. There was a long pause. What would it take to change your mind? An apology would be a good start. From who? From your employee who thinks I'm nobody without her degree. Another pause, longer this time. I see. And if you got that apology? Then we could discuss my consulting rates for emergency file recovery. What kind of rates are we talking about? I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. The kind that reflect the value of working with somebody instead of nobody. The call ended with Patterson promising to get back to me within the hour. I spent the time working on other projects, taking my time, enjoying the feeling of being needed instead of tolerated. At 3 o'clock, my doorbell rang again. This time, it was Kiera, looking like she'd had the worst day of her professional life. Her perfect hair was disheveled, her makeup smudged, and her designer clothes wrinkled from what had probably been a very long walk in inappropriate shoes. We need to talk, she said. Do we? Rowan, please, can I just come inside? I stepped aside and let her in. She collapsed onto the couch like someone who'd just finished running a marathon. Tom Patterson called you, she said. He did. What did you tell him? That I'm nobody without your degree. She closed her eyes. How much do you want? Excuse me? To fix this, to restore the files and turn my phone back on and make this whole nightmare go away. How much money do you want? I sat down across from her. You think this is about money? Isn't it? Kiera, I make more money in a month than most people make in 6. My consulting business has been profitable for 3 years running. I don't need your money. Then what do you want? I want you to explain something to me. Yesterday, you stood up in front of a room full of people and told them that without your degree, I'd be nobody. Today, your entire career depends on getting help from that same nobody. How does that work exactly? She was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I was showing off. What? Last night, I was showing off for Derek and the others, trying to prove that I was in control, that I had everything figured out. It was stupid and mean, and I'm sorry. Are you sorry you said it, or sorry that it had consequences? Both. I leaned back in my chair. That's a start. So you'll help? I didn't say that. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. Rowan, I know I hurt you. I know I was wrong. But there are other people involved now. Jennifer, Tom, the whole team. They didn't do anything to you. No, but they laughed when you did. What? Last night, when you made your little toast about how I'd be nobody without your degree. They all laughed. Every single one of them thought it was hilarious that you'd married down and were generous enough to remind me of it in public. Kiera's face crumpled. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it? I don't know. I wasn't thinking. That's the problem, Kiera. You never think about how your words affect other people. You just say whatever makes you look good in the moment, and everyone else has to deal with the consequences. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in dark streams. Please, Rowan, I'll do anything. I'll apologize publicly. I'll tell everyone how wrong I was. You'll what? Admit that you need help from somebody without a degree? That your Harvard MBA doesn't actually make you better than everyone else? Yes, if that's what it takes. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or calculation. All I saw was genuine desperation and what might have been the beginning of actual humility. All right, I said finally. All right. I'll make you a deal. You go back to your office and tell Tom Patterson exactly what you told me. That you were showing off, that you were wrong, and that you need help from someone you publicly humiliated. You do that in front of the same people who laughed last night, and I'll restore your files. And my phone? And the car insurance? We'll see how convincing your apology is. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her makeup even more. Okay, I'll do it. I know you will, because you don't have a choice. She stood up slowly, like someone who'd just agreed to walk to her own execution. Will you come with me? To your office? Why would I do that? Because I want them to see that you're not nobody. I want them to understand that I was wrong. I considered it. There was something appealing about watching Kiera eat crow in front of her colleagues, especially the ones who'd found her toast so amusing. But there was also something sad about it, like watching someone destroy themselves for your entertainment. No, I said. This is something you need to do yourself. She nodded and headed for the door. Rowan? Yeah? Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You haven't given your speech. After she left, I sat in my living room and thought about what I'd just agreed to. Part of me wanted to see if she'd actually go through with it, if she'd really stand up in front of her colleagues and admit she'd been wrong. Another part of me wondered if this was enough, or if there were deeper problems in our marriage that couldn't be fixed with a simple apology. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Kiera, heading to the office now. Wish me luck. I didn't respond. Luck had nothing to do with it. This was about accountability, something that apparently hadn't been covered in business school. I'd know soon enough if she'd learned anything from her education. The call came at 5:30. I was wrapping up a security consultation for a law firm in Seattle when my phone rang. Tom Patterson's name appeared on the caller ID, and something in the formal way he said, Mr. Kerrick told me that Kiera had delivered her speech. I owe you an apology, he said without preamble. Do you? Kiera explained what happened last night, what she said, how my staff reacted. That was inappropriate, and I'm sorry it happened. Are you sorry it happened, or sorry that it's costing you a client? Patterson was quiet for a moment. Both, if I'm being honest, but mostly sorry it happened. Kiera is a valued employee, but that doesn't excuse treating anyone's spouse with disrespect. I appreciate that. She also explained the situation with the files. I understand they were stored on your personal account. That's correct. And that when you canceled the account, they were deleted. Also correct. Can they be recovered? I leaned back in my chair. Probably. Cloud storage companies usually maintain backups for 30 days after an account is closed, but the recovery process requires the original account holder to request it. Which would be you. Yes? And you're willing to do that? For the right price. What did you have in mind? I'd been thinking about this all afternoon. $50,000? 50,000? Patterson's voice went up an octave. For file recovery? For emergency consulting services provided under extreme time pressure to prevent the loss of a $12 million contract. Seems reasonable to me. Mr. Kerrick, that's more than most people make in a year. Most people don't have Harvard MBAs, though. I'm sure your staff would agree that education has value. Another long pause. I need to discuss this with my partners. You have until 6 o'clock. After that, my rates go up. Why 6 o'clock? Because that's when the cloud storage company's customer service department closes for the day. If you want the files recovered tonight, we need to start the process in the next 30 minutes. I let the words sit there, deliberately not filling the silence that followed. Deadlines have a way of sharpening attention, and I could almost hear Patterson recalculating his priorities on the other end of the line. This wasn't a technical explanation. It was leverage, pure and simple, wrapped in a matter-of-fact tone. The line went quiet, except for the sound of Patterson breathing heavily. I'll call you back in 10 minutes. He hung up, and I went back to my work, trying to pretend I wasn't watching the clock. I adjusted a few settings on my screen, reorganized a folder that didn't actually need reorganizing, and glanced at the time anyway. The truth was, I didn't actually need $50,000. My consulting business was doing well enough that the money, while nice, wouldn't change my life. It wasn't about survival or desperation, but the principle mattered. For 3 years, I'd been treated like an accessory to Kiera's success, someone whose contributions were taken for granted and whose feelings were irrelevant. I'd fixed problems quietly, smoothed crises behind the scenes, and watched others take credit because it was simpler that way. Today, that dynamic had shifted, and I wasn't about to give that ground back. My phone rang at exactly 5:50. We'll pay your fee, Patterson said. His voice was clipped now, all urgency and no pretense. But we need a guarantee that the files can be recovered. I can't guarantee anything. I can guarantee that I'll make the attempt and that I know what I'm doing. Beyond that, you're paying for expertise, not results. There was a pause, the kind that meant he didn't like the answer but understood it. That's not very reassuring. Mr. Patterson, you have a choice. You can pay my fee and possibly save your contract, or you can refuse and definitely lose it. Those are your options. Another silence. Longer this time. Fine. How do we proceed? I'll need a signed consulting agreement and 50% up front before I make any calls. The balance is due when the files are delivered, regardless of their condition. Jesus, you're not making this easy. Easy is what got us into this situation in the first place. 20 minutes later, I had a signed contract and a wire transfer confirmation for $25,000. Seeing the confirmation hit my inbox felt less like victory and more like validation. I called the cloud storage company's emergency recovery line and spent an hour on the phone with technicians, walking them through the account details and recovery requirements, repeating myself patiently when they defaulted to scripted responses. By 8 o'clock, I had a download link for a compressed archive containing everything that had been stored in Kiera's shared folders. I extracted the files, verified that they were intact, and uploaded them to a new temporary storage account, double-checking permissions and access logs like my reputation depended on it, because it did. Then I called Patterson. The files are recovered, I said. All of them? Everything that was in the shared folders as of this morning. Presentations, spreadsheets, documents, images, it's all there. I could hear the relief in his exhale. Thank God. How do we access them? I'll send you a download link after I receive the balance of my fee. Mr. Kerrick, it's 8 o'clock at night. Our accounting department is closed. Then I guess you'll get the files tomorrow morning. The client meeting is at 9 a.m. Then you'd better hope your accounting department gets in early. I hung up and sent an email with the wire transfer instructions. Then I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my back porch, listening to the sounds of suburbia settling into evening. Somewhere in the distance, a dog was barking. A lawnmower hummed in a neighbor's yard. Normal sounds of normal people living normal lives. For the first time that day, my shoulders relaxed. My phone buzzed with a text from Kiera. Tom says you recovered the files. Thank you. I didn't respond. Another text followed a minute later. Are you going to turn my phone back on? I thought about it. The phone service was a monthly expense of maybe $80. In the context of what had happened today, it was almost trivial. But symbols mattered, and the phone had become a symbol of something larger. Access, entitlement, the assumption that things would always just work because I made them work. I typed back, "We'll see." 20 minutes later, I heard a car in the driveway. Through the kitchen window, I could see Kiera getting out of what looked like a rental car. She moved slowly, like someone who'd just survived a natural disaster and wasn't sure the ground was stable yet. She came through the front door and found me in the kitchen, checking email on my laptop. "Hi," she said. "Hi. Long day." I imagined so. She sat down across from me at the table. Her makeup was gone, her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she was wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual business attire. She looked younger somehow, less polished, but more real. "I gave the speech," she said. "I heard. It was awful. Standing up in front of everyone and admitting that I was wrong, that I'd been cruel to you for no reason." Jennifer cried. Mike from marketing looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "And Derek?" "Derek left for Chicago this morning, but I called him and apologized over the phone. Told him exactly what I told everyone else." I closed my laptop. Which was? That I was showing off. That I said something cruel and stupid to make myself look important. And that it wasn't true. That you're not nobody, that you never were nobody, and that I was lucky you put up with my nonsense for as long as you did. Put up with. Past tense, yes. I assume you're leaving me. I studied her face. Are you? Am I what? Lucky that I put up with your nonsense. She was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. I hope so. But I understand if you don't think so anymore. Kiera, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you marry me? The question seemed to catch her off guard. What do you mean? I mean, if you really think I'm nobody without your degree, why did you marry me? What did you see in someone so far beneath your educational level? She winced at the phrasing. I don't think you're beneath me. You said I would be nobody without your degree. I said something stupid when I was trying to impress people who don't matter. That doesn't mean I believe it. Doesn't it? She was quiet again, longer this time. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. When I first met you, you were the most competent person I'd ever known. You could fix anything, build anything, figure out any problem. You made me feel safe in a way I'd never felt before. And now? Now I realize I've been taking that for granted. Taking you for granted. For 3 years. Yes. I got up and poured myself another glass of wine. Want some? Please. I poured her a glass and sat back down. The phone service will be restored tomorrow. Thank you. The car insurance, too. I appreciate that. But things are going to be different. She nodded. I understand. Do you? Because I'm not sure you do. Tell me. I'm not your technical support department anymore. I'm not your backup plan for when your education doesn't cover basic life skills. If you want to be independent, then be independent. Manage your own accounts, pay your own bills, solve your own problems. Okay? And if you ever humiliate me in public again, I won't just cancel your phone service. I'll file for divorce and take half of everything we've built together. She flinched. Understood. Good. We sat in silence for a while, drinking wine and avoiding eye contact. Finally, Kiera spoke. Can I ask you something? Sure. How long have you been planning this? Planning what? The revenge. The systematic dismantling of my entire life. You did it too efficiently for it to be spontaneous. I considered lying, telling her it had all been improvised in a moment of anger. But she deserved honesty, even if it was uncomfortable. I wasn't planning it specifically, but I've always known that most of our life was built on systems I created and managed. It would have been impossible not to notice. So you always knew you could do this to me. I always knew I could protect myself if I needed to. And last night, you decided you needed to. Last night, you made it clear that you don't respect me. So I stopped doing things that required your respect. She nodded slowly. That's fair. Is it? I think so. I think I needed to learn what my life would look like without you. It's not a lesson I'll forget. We finished our wine in silence. When Kiera went upstairs to bed, I stayed in the kitchen, answering emails and thinking about the day. My phone showed 17 missed calls and 43 unread messages, most of them related to the crisis at Patterson and Associates. At 11 o'clock, I received a wire transfer notification for the remaining $25,000. I sent Patterson the download link for the recovered files, along with a brief email. Files attached. Thank you for your business. Then I turned off my laptop and went to bed. Kiera was already asleep, or pretending to be. In the darkness, I could hear her breathing, steady but not quite natural. She was probably lying awake thinking about the day, about the speech she'd given, about how quickly her carefully constructed life had fallen apart. I felt sorry for her, but not sorry enough to regret what I'd done. Sometimes people needed to learn hard lessons about respect and consequences. Sometimes the only way to save a relationship was to let it break and see if both people cared enough to fix it properly. Tomorrow would tell us which kind of people we were. I set my alarm for 7 and fell asleep wondering if we'd still be married by the end of the week. 3 weeks later, I was debugging a server configuration for a client in Portland when Kiera knocked on my office door. She'd been knocking instead of just walking in since the incident, one of many small changes in our daily routine. There's someone here to see you, she said. Who? Tom Patterson. He says he has a business proposition. I saved my work and followed her to the living room, where Patterson was sitting on our couch looking like a man who'd rather be anywhere else. He stood when I entered, extending his hand in a gesture that seemed more respectful than our previous interactions. Rowan, thank you for seeing me. What can I do for you, Tom? I wanted to follow up on the Morrison contract. The presentation went well. We got the deal. Congratulations. The client was impressed with our crisis management capabilities. They asked how we were able to recover from what could have been a catastrophic data loss so quickly. I sat down across from him. What did you tell them? The truth, that we had access to exceptional technical expertise when we needed it most. And? Patterson shifted uncomfortably. They want to retain that expertise on a permanent basis. They're looking for a consulting firm to handle their IT infrastructure nationwide. It's a 3-year contract worth about $2 million. That's a lot of money. It is, and they specifically requested that you be the lead consultant. I glanced at Kiera, who was standing in the doorway, listening to every word. Her expression was carefully neutral, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. Why are you telling me this instead of just hiring me directly? Because they want to work with Patterson and Associates, not an independent contractor. They like the idea of having both business consulting and technical expertise under one roof. So you want to hire me? I want to offer you a partnership. The room went quiet. Even the neighbor's dog, who'd been barking intermittently all morning, seemed to sense that something important was happening. A partnership, I repeated. 20% equity, full profit sharing, your name on the letterhead, Patterson, Kerrick, and Associates. And in exchange? You bring your technical consulting business into the firm. We handle the administrative overhead, you focus on the client work. Everyone wins. I leaned back in my chair. That's a generous offer. It's a fair offer. Your expertise saved our biggest contract. Without you, we'd probably be laying people off right now instead of talking about expansion. What does Kiera think about this? Patterson glanced at my wife, who was still standing in the doorway like she was afraid to move. She thinks it's a good idea, but she also said the decision is entirely yours. Did she? She did. She was very clear that her opinion shouldn't influence your choice one way or the other. I looked at Kiera again. Is that true? She nodded. It's your career, Rowan. Your expertise, your reputation, your decision. Even though we'd be working together? Even though. I turned back to Patterson. I need some time to think about it. Of course. Take all the time you need. But I should mention that the client wants an answer by Friday. Today's Tuesday. Yes. That's not very much time to make a major life decision. Patterson smiled for the first time since he'd arrived. Welcome to the consulting business. Everything's always urgent. After he left, Kiera and I sat in the living room, not quite looking at each other. The partnership offer hung between us like a piece of furniture we weren't sure where to put. What do you think? She asked finally. I think it's interesting. But I'm not sure I want to work with you. She flinched slightly. Because you don't trust me? Because I don't know if you've actually changed, or if you're just being careful because you're afraid I'll embarrass you again. That's fair. Is it? Because 3 weeks ago you thought I was nobody without your degree. Now your boss wants to make me a partner. That's a pretty dramatic shift in perspective. Kiera was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? Sure. The day I gave that speech, apologizing to everyone in the office, Jennifer came up to me afterward. She said she'd always wondered how you and I ended up together, because you seem so much more grounded than me. What did you tell her? That I'd been wondering the same thing. I studied her face. And what conclusion did you reach? That you married someone you thought had potential, and I married someone I thought would make me look good. The difference is, you were right. Kiera. No, let me finish. I've been thinking about this for 3 weeks. About why I said what I said. About why I needed to put you down to build myself up. And I think it's because deep down, I knew you were better at this than me. Better at what? Life, problem solving, being a decent human being. I have a degree from Harvard, but you have something I never learned in school. Wisdom. I wasn't sure how to respond to that. You're giving me too much credit. Am I? Because when your wife humiliated you in public, you didn't scream or throw things or make a scene. You just quietly removed yourself from the situation and let the consequences speak for themselves. That's not revenge, Rowan. That's justice. It felt like revenge. Maybe. But it was also education. You taught me something I couldn't learn in business school. That respect has to be earned, not demanded. We sat in silence for a while, each lost in our own thoughts. Finally, I spoke. If I take the partnership, things will be different. How different? I won't be your technical support anymore. I'll be your business partner. That means equal say in decisions, equal responsibility for outcomes, equal respect in all interactions. The words hung between us, heavier than I expected. This wasn't an emotional ultimatum or a spur-of-the-moment reaction. It was measured, deliberate, and final. I wanted her to understand that this wasn't about titles or ego. It was about boundaries, about redefining how we worked together and how we saw each other in professional spaces. I understand. She said it quickly, almost too quickly, as if agreement alone might smooth things over. Do you? Because if you ever try to diminish me in front of clients or colleagues, I'll end the partnership immediately. No warnings. No second chances. This time I didn't soften my tone. I needed clarity more than reassurance. I wouldn't do that. You did it 3 weeks ago. The reminder landed quietly, but it landed hard. She didn't argue. She didn't deflect. She nodded. You're right. But I won't do it again. How can I be sure? I wasn't challenging her sincerity. I was questioning the pattern. Because I've seen what my life looks like without you. I don't want to go back to that. There was no drama in her voice, just honesty. The kind that comes after consequences. I thought about it. The partnership offer was genuinely attractive from a business perspective. Patterson and Associates had good clients, solid reputation, and the infrastructure to handle larger contracts than I could manage alone. The numbers made sense. The growth potential was real, but the personal dynamics were complicated in ways that spreadsheets couldn't account for. Mixing marriage and business had nearly broken us once already. I need to ask you something, I said. Okay. If I take this partnership and we're working together every day, can you handle having a husband who's also your business equal? Someone whose opinion carries the same weight as yours in professional settings? This wasn't a trick question. It was the core of everything. I think so. Think so isn't good enough. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at a spot on the wall as if she were answering herself before answering me. Yes. I can handle it. I want to handle it. Why? Because I want to see what we can build together when we're actually partners instead of just married. That answer stayed with me longer than I expected. That evening I called Patterson and accepted the offer. The paperwork took 2 days to finalize. Contracts were reviewed, terms clarified, signatures added where they needed to be. By Friday, I was moving my office equipment into a corner suite at Patterson and Associates, setting up the technical infrastructure that would support our expanded consulting services. It felt official in a way nothing else had before. Kiera helped with the move, carrying boxes and organizing cables with the focused intensity she usually reserved for client presentations. There was no small talk, no tension, just quiet cooperation. We worked well together, I realized. When we weren't worried about who was in charge or who deserved more credit, we were actually quite efficient. This is nice, she said, looking around my new office. It's bigger than the spare bedroom. She smiled faintly. That's not what I meant. What did you mean? I meant working together, being on the same side for once. I plugged in my last monitor and turned to look at her. We were always on the same side, Kiera. You just forgot that for a while. I know, I'm sorry. I know you are. She smiled, and for the first time in weeks, it looked genuine, not performative, not defensive. So what happens now? Now we get to work. We have a $2 million contract to fulfill. Think we can handle it? I looked around my new office, at the equipment that would help me manage networks for clients across the country, at the woman who'd learned to see me as a partner instead of an accessory. Yeah, I said. I think we can handle it. 6 months later, Patterson, Kerrick and Associates had expanded to 12 employees and was bidding on contracts worth more than $10 million. Growth brought pressure, long hours, and difficult decisions. But it also brought confidence. Kiera and I had settled into a working relationship that was professional, respectful, and surprisingly effective. We were also still married, though that relationship required daily maintenance in ways it never had before. Trust, once broken, had to be rebuilt piece by piece, conversation by conversation, decision by decision. There were setbacks. There were hard talks. But there was also progress. We were rebuilding it. And this time, we were building it on a foundation of mutual respect instead of mutual convenience. It turned out that when nobody tried to be somebody at someone else's expense, everybody could be successful. The education was worth every penny,